You know, when you go into a French patisserie, or any patisserie for that matter, you come across these beautiful pies. Now, I call them a high pie. I don't really know what the French chefs call them, the pastry chefs call them, but they're very, very high. Some of them up to 10 centimetres high. And often they're little ones, or they can be a full big pie. And I often wondered how they got those incredibly high, straight-sided pastry, absolutely chock-a-block full. Well, it's actually not that difficult, it turns out. It's really just a matter of lining a cake tin, and I use a springform tin, the ones that have the clips on the side that lift off completely, because I can lift them and lift it right off, and I end up with this beautiful, perfect pie, and you'll see that at the end of this recipe. So I've called this my casserole or stew high pie, because the filling that goes into these is either a casserole or a stew. Now, that could be a sweet casserole, or a savoury casserole. It depends on what you want to make. So you could just use casserole fruit or custard mixed with fruit, or, you know, kind of anything you want really. I'm making it today savoury, and because we're leading into St. Pat's Day, I thought I'd make a beef and Guinness casserole or stew, and that is going to be the filling for my pie today. Now, I've already pre-made that, and the reason I've done that is twofold. Firstly, because it's one of my base recipes. You need to come back to the site and become a member of the site in order to be able to see that content. But secondly, because the stew or the filling, whatever you put in your high pie, actually has to be completely cold. So it's better to make it hours beforehand, or even, as I've done, the day before. And for those of you who make stews and casseroles or anything slow cooked, you'll know that the flavour actually develops better anyway if it's left for a fairly long period of time. So that's exactly what I've done. All I did was make my perfect stew, what I call my perfect stew, because it is. It's so simple and so easy to make, but so delicious. And instead of putting stock in there or wine or whatever, I actually put a whole bottle of Guinness in. So the flavour is quite delicious and very, very strong and just perfect for St. Pat's Day. So if you're looking for a nice hearty meal to prepare, let's hope it's cold, to make for St. Pat's Day that you want to serve up to a group of friends or to the family, then I think this pie could be just the ticket. So let's begin by talking about what you're going to need to make the pie, and then I'm going to show you how to do the pastry, because that's the key element of this. We'll do that pastry and then we'll put the pre-made stew into it. So let's have a look at the ingredients first. So to make your high pie, you're going to need 4 quantities of a basic stew or casserole that has been completely allowed to go cold. You'll need 4 sheets of frozen puff pastry, a springform tin, cookie cutters if you want to decorate your pie, and either a milk wash or a beaten egg to glaze with afterwards. So the first thing that you need to do is to make your stew or casserole, as I've said earlier, either the day before or several hours before, so that it's completely cold before beginning the prep for your pie. Begin by preheating your oven to 220 degrees Celsius and set it on fan forced. Normally with pastry, I know we normally would set it on a classic bake or a baker's function, but for this particular one, because there's pastry on the top and the bottom, and because we're not blind baking it, fan forced is the best way to go. Begin by separating your frozen pastry sheets and cut 2 of them in half. So you've got 4 sheets all up, and you're going to have 2 of them cut in half so that you end up with 4 oblong pieces. Separate the springform pan and lay the base over one of the full sheets of pastry. Now what you want to do here is take a paring knife and cut around the edge just outside the rim of the base, about a ½ centimetre. Now the cut does not need to be perfect, you just need to cut away that excess pastry. Now peel the plastic backing from the circle that you've just cut out and place it over the pan base and press it into the edges. Now replace the springform sides and snap it into place. Now some of the pastry will stick out. Don't worry about that. It's not going to be a worry towards the end. Now take one of the other half sheets, as you can see here, this was once a full sheet and I cut it in half, and using your paring knife, make a series of 2 centimetre cuts from one of the long edges, about 1½ centimetres apart, all the way along the edge. Now remove the plastic backing here as well and ease the sheet, cut side down, around part of the edge of the springform pan. You're going to need the 3 sheets here to make this work. You want the cuts to fan out at the base of the pan and even out, and the reason we've cut them like that is so that they'll overlap and sit right up next to the sides of the pan. This is going to form the sides of your high pie. Now what you want to do with this is repeat this process with the other 2 half pastry sheets. So you're going to cut them down the edges and then place them in there. The top should also be overlapping over the top edge of the tin. Now you want to add that cold stew or casserole. Okay, so once you've done that, the whole idea here is actually that you've got quite a lot of pastry, as you can see, because we've got the base, then we've got all of that cut out around there as well, so that's like a double thickness, and we've got it right at the edges, which is really good because we don't want the pie to ooze out once that filling reheats again. It's important to have a reasonable amount of pastry, because if you don't, it's not going to hold its shape once you take the sides of that springform pan off. So that is really, really important. So don't think like you've overdone it with the pastry here, because you actually haven't. You'll need the whole 3 sheets. And you're probably wondering, why have I kept that 4th end? Well, we're going to use that for a little bit of decoration. Okay, so now it's time to add our cold stew or casserole. Now you want to make sure that you fill this right to the top of the tin. If you don't, you're going to find your pastry's going to sink in at the top, and it's not going to look anywhere near as spectacular as it will if you have your filling going all the way to the top. And that's the reason why I've suggested you make 4 quantities, so that you make sure that you've got enough for whatever size tin you decide to use, because these tins can, quite frankly, come in a number of different sizes. Now take that final sheet of pastry, the full sheet, and after removing the plastic there, lay it right over the top of the tin so it covers the entire tin. Use your fingers to press the top of the pastry sheet onto the overlapped pastry from the other sides that you added, and make them really firm and hold together. Now fold the pastry over at the edge of the tin and under the rim just a little bit so it seals perfectly with the pastry underneath. Then, taking a sharp knife, again your little paring knife will work perfectly here, cut away all of that excess pastry. Now, you've got a couple of options here. You can just pop it straight into the oven like that after piercing the top of it, or you can use that other 4th section that we talked about a minute ago and use a cookie cutter to cut out some shapes. And you might choose shapes that are applicable to perhaps the particular occasion you're making this pie for. It was Christmas time, you might actually make some little Christmas trees or some Christmas decorations. I'm actually going to make hearts with mine, not for any other reason other than I happen to like the heart cookie cutters, but you could do pretty much anything that you like. So if you've got some cookie cutters and you don't want to throw that pastry away, then cut out some little shapes and put them on the top. They look quite lovely when you actually present. So let me show you how to do that. So just use your cookie cutter to cut out these shapes, peel the plastic backing off that, and just arrange them around the actual pie as evenly as possible. Now it's really important that you create air holes in the top before you place your pie in the oven. This allows the steam to escape during the cooking. Finally, glaze the top of the pie with milk or an egg wash. Then place it into the preheated oven and bake for 40 to 45 minutes or until the pastry is cooked and golden brown. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these pies are best left to cool, and I find that they turn out the best. All you need to do is allow it to cool to room temperature first, and then pop it into the fridge covered with some cling wrap or Glad wrap or even some alfoil, and bring it out again a few hours later, or even better, the very next day. And then actually cut your pie with a nice sharp knife and place each of the pieces on the plates or separately on a pan of some sort in the oven. That way they'll hold their shape, and when you then scoop them off that and put them onto the plate, they will look fantastic and hold their shape. So that is always the best way to do it, in my opinion. If you don't do that and you put the whole pie into the oven and reheat that, when you go to cut it, the whole thing's going to collapse on you, because the pastry is going to be crispy but soft as well, because you'll find that the pastry underneath is actually a little bit soggy because we have not blind baked it first. Now, you can go to that trouble if you want to do the blind baking, but because it's so high and so deep, trying to get enough of the ceramic pie weights to fill it is not an easy task. So that's why I don't bother going down that track. And because my filling is cold and it's actually quite solid because it's thickened up overnight as it's cooled down, then it really enables that pie to hold its shape absolutely perfectly. So as you can see from this image now, it really does look quite amazing. So there you have it, my casserole or stew high pie. Try it with some sweet ingredients as well. I think it'd be fantastic with just layers and layers of apples. And in fact, you wouldn't even have to bake the apples or stew them beforehand. I'd make the pastry, then I just absolutely completely fill it with apples that I've tossed some cinnamon through, maybe some sultanas through that, some herbs and spices, and even maybe a little bit of Dutch cocoa or chocolate all through that as well. Mix that into it and have that in the pastry, and that would be absolutely delicious. In fact, I might make one of those ones next. I think that would be quite nice. Anyway, as you know, basic stew is one of the base recipes on the website, and in order to be able to get that recipe, you'll need to come back to the site and subscribe. The new format for the site moving forward, which we haven't had up until now, pretty much all you had to do was register on the site and you had access to all of the content. Well, we're now going through a process where we need to actually generate revenue from that site. So in order to see all the base recipes and all the how-to videos, they are all via subscription. It's not an expensive subscription, and you have an option to purchase that if you wish to be able to see all of those others. Now, if you don't have access to all of those, some of the recipes that I do won't actually make a lot of sense because you won't be able to see those base recipes, which I make first, as I did today with the stew or casserole. So think about that. I'd love to have you come by the site and have a look at what we've got over there. It is chock-block full of content. In fact, considerably more than we had before, and I'm sure you'll find something on there of value. If not, just to get your basic stew, my simple basic stew, to make your high pie. I hope you enjoy that. I hope you have a fantastic St. Pat's Day if you decide to make this for St. Pat's Day, and I look forward to seeing you again next time with more yummy cooking. I'm Victoria Hanson. Bye for now.